My name is Jeremy, and this is Good Beer Matters.
So I like to introduce people to the whole world of beer and the world of flavour. You get a little boost of confidence when you can pick differences between something based on taste. When I describe my job to people just say, "Oh, you've got a fun job."
Why does beer flavor matter so much? I mean, as long as it tastes good, what else is important? Can we actually get a sense of place through flavor? My next guest seems to think so and is here to share this and Australian culture through the flavor of beer. We find great experiences at the intersection of craft and culture. These are the stories of us, of great food and the beer that brings it all together. For the craft and culture of beer, this is episode 134 of Good Beer Matters with certified Cicerone and sensory analyst Briony Leibich. Well, welcome back to the podcast. In this next episode, we are quite literally on opposite sides of the world, so much so that, Briony, it is your morning, it is my evening. It's your Saturday morning, it's my Friday evening. I always get a kick out of that, in this day and age, that we can be on opposite sides of the world and still have a video phone call. And when I was a kid, that was the stuff of sci-fi. So I'm really glad that you're here and that we get to do it semi in person. But
Yes.
welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much, Jeremy. Thanks for the invitation to share my beer experiences in Australia.
Well, and I shared with you. Yeah, I think you and I have been following each other on Instagram, as far as I know, for a little while now. And you're doing some really good work down in Australia. And we just happened to meet in Nashville at the craft brewers conference. And the funny thing was, the night before it really got kicked off, I'm standing with a group of friends and having a beer and talking about, one of the things I love about the beer business is you can meet someone through social media or at a conference or something like that. And the next thing you know, just because it's the beer business, you're kind of buddies to begin with. And I was speaking, I had you in mind when I was talking about this, and like literally not even 2 seconds later, you walked right behind me and said, "Well, hi."
That's amazing. Yeah, no, Nashville was an incredible experience, especially meeting people who I had a connection with already through things like Instagram, and beer and what I do, beer sensory, is quite niche. So it was really
Yeah.
wonderful to connect with similar passionate people.
We're definitely like-minded, but we're not the same. We're from all over the world, from different, whatever you plug in the adjective there. But we're also different, but we're brought together through this beer thing. And as I shared with you and other guests, that my theory about all of this is because of that, beer really is an international culture. But when we go home to our respective homes and subcultures and just the way that we do things, it becomes very individualized. And that's why I wanted to talk to you and everyone else this season. I'm just so fascinated by this idea. But before we get any further, Briony, will you please introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Certainly. My name is Briony Leibich. I live in Adelaide, South Australia. I am a sensory analyst, and I'm running a business called Flavour Logic. So Flavour Logic is running sensory consulting for food and beverage, and since my experience in the beer industry, I'm doing also beer education and sensory or taste training for a variety of people, from consumers to industry.
And so, what is your training that makes you a sensory analyst?
So sensory analyst, passionate about food, drink, everything. I discovered sensory science a few years ago. I was working in the wine industry. I actually grew up in the wine industry in a famous wine region called Barossa Valley. So I was lucky to be surrounded by wine culture, good food, agriculture, vineyards. So my family have taught me to appreciate good food, good drink, and alcohol in moderation.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of people from growing up in the wine industry, I fell into the wine world, and there's a group in Adelaide who do a lot of wine research, and there was a position for a sensory analyst, and I was trained on the job. There's not many places to study sensory evaluation, so I was lucky to be trained on the job with expert wine tasters. And part of that job was training lots of other people to work as a group to measure flavors and mouthfeel and aromas of wine for research projects. How does that turn into beer? You might be
Yeah,
asking.
that's my next question is
Yes.
you sound like you have this dream job in wine. How did
Yeah,
you end up at the
in
Brewers
beer.
Conference in Nashville? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I just wanted a taste of, like a fast-moving industry role. So I put some feelers out, and yeah, my first connection was with the second largest beer company called Lion, and they needed a sensory person in Adelaide. I got the job on the spot, and yeah, since then I managed a sensory program at a brewery that had 100 staff, made millions of litres of beer, and yeah, taught myself how to appreciate beer from a wine drinker's background.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So the whole idea of sensory, I find interesting, and I also find it equally confounding as well because there's the whole idea of data versus anecdote. There's a subjective versus objective. There's the this is what we can measure, and this is what people feel and tell me about. We seem to put so much of our reliance on data. Uh, and we seem to discredit the idea of this is what they told me. I don't care what they told me. I want the hard facts. I want the numbers. Yet when we go to the doctor says, "Tell me where it hurts," and I'll say it hurts right here, and say, "How much does it hurt on a scale of 1 to 10?" Well, it's an 8. Well, tell me what it feels like. Is it pressure? Is it sharp? So there's still that anecdotal evidence along with we're going to measure your blood pressure and your heart rate and all that stuff. When it comes to sensory, it seems like it's the same thing. We want numbers, we want facts, we want data, yet this is what we are experiencing through our senses. Unpack that for me from your sensory analyst point of view.
Oh, if we want to stick with the beer world, a lot of beer sensory, the beer industry is a very fast paced industry. So the sensory side of beer is more about getting consistent, true to brand kind of putting numbers to it does help, because the more you record, the more you can track your batches. You can come back, make improvements. So yeah, numbers are good, but in beer you can train people to come up with a few. Keep the descriptors simple, keep them consistent, keep keep serving the products in a similar way, and people get used to tasting using a similar tasting technique. The data builds up over a longer period of time. So a lot of people might get put off, setting up a sensory program from scratch, but it over time the data really builds and it becomes way more useful. And once a person is trained to recognise the key sensory properties of beer, it is much getting 2 or 3 people or 5 people together is a quicker measure than using analytics and sending a beer off for chemistry analysis. So once people are trained, it's a quick, simple measure that gives very good data over a longer period of time, I think.
So is it just one of those things where having some data, whether it's anecdotal or
Yes.
measurable, having something to start with is a great way to start,
Yes, yes. And the good
right?
thing about sensory, you know, a brewery's already making the beer. A brewery already has staff and people who have taste buds, and you can use anybody in the brewery. The hardest thing for doing sensory training and getting into breweries is the time, getting people to stop for an hour, 2 hours, and getting people off the floor.
Yeah.
That's tricky.
That sounds like a culture problem,
Yeah.
and a priority problem
Yep. Yep.
to
Yep.
me. So tell us more about your business, Flavor Logic. You're doing sensory, you're educating consumers, you're consulting for breweries and more. What all exactly are you doing there, and who needs your services?
Yeah, sure. So while I was working at this large brewery, I was trained, teaching myself about beer, training myself on the job. The brewery also made beer and cider and RTD spirits, like a rum and cola. So
Hmm.
all of those products I became quite familiar. And while I was doing the brewery work, I found out about the Cicerone program, and I think that's what inspired my desire to focus Flavour Logic on kind of education in beer. And I think because I grew up in a wine culture region, we are surrounded by a lot more wine culture. People do cellar door visits. There's a lot of winery tours around, a lot of food and wine festivals. There's not so much happening for beer, so I thought I could fill a little niche there. Help. I'm doing some collaborations with local breweries who, Saturday afternoon, I come along, we do some beer and food pairing, I share tips on tasting beer. Um, People love exercises like guess the aroma. I've got aromas isolated in jars. Um, you know,
Which
you,
is different. Which is that we used to play that game in college with a room full of guys, but it really was a completely different game.
yes. No, people, you can teach people to taste and smell. I think teaching smelling is one of the
Hmm.
best tips for becoming a better taster.
Yeah, big
Yeah,
bang for the buck there.
everyone, um, everyone who want people who love wine want to learn about beer. People who love beer just want to learn more about beer and taste different styles, or get introduced to classic styles. Um, I think Australian beer trends are following a similar pattern to America with a lot of pale ales, IPAs, hazies. Um, so we follow those similar trends, and um, only a few breweries are making some European, Belgian, and German classics. So I like to introduce people to the whole world of beer and the world of flavour. And when it comes to industry work, breweries want to train up their tasters. They want to know who's sensitive to things like diacetyl. Um, Flavor recognition training is excellent for breweries. So a lot of breweries don't have, the small to medium sized breweries don't have dedicated lab or a quality person or something like that. So I can come in and do regular training. And I like to ask for them to. A lot of people don't taste their beers once they're packaged. They Someone who works at a brewery gets to taste fresh beer all the time. It's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, a lot of, we know how beer changes with time. So I like to test people by blind tasting, maybe a fresh beer next to a 3-month-old beer or a 6-month-old beer, things like that.
Well, and I want to ask you. I mean, you're trying to provide this service not only for consumers, but trying to help train the staff that work in these breweries. And frankly, I've been trying to bang that drum myself here in the U.S., where in the Northwest where I live, and I've had interest. But not everyone's committed to that. Everyone I talk to about this idea of we need to educate our staff better, everyone says yes, that's a great idea, but it's slow to actually be put into action.
Mhm.
What is your experience? How well is your uh, education received?
Yes, I find the same issue. Yep, yep. And another issue. Like I said, breweries, yeah, fast paced. People might work on different shifts. Bar staff, front of house staff are working different days. Yeah, it would be nice to have like a stop for quality day, or I don't know, something like that, where you get a couple hours, everybody can taste together. Because I find the best learnings are in group tastings. So yeah, I keep trying myself. But
But
it's
are you
slowly
getting
happening.
pushback? Are you getting like I'm seeing where people think, "Oh, that's a great idea," but they don't show up. They don't pay for it. Are you seeing the same?
Um, it depends on the brewery, how busy they are, but I think yeah, they all want it, but I think coordinating the time is tricky. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
happening. It's happening. It's
So,
often hard. It's hardest to get the front of house staff, unfortunately. You
yeah.
you have more breweries and production staff. They all want to chip in, but yeah, front of house. But um, and then also it can help, when it comes to a product profile, we can help isolate the key flavors. And I might just work with a brewer to help prepare those things, if and train someone else in the brewery to train the front of house staff.
Yeah.
As long as they have
Well,
like a clear one pager per beer, help improve the customer service.
and I've worked front of house, off and on throughout my career, and so I kind of have a passion for the whole front of house. They're the ones that you should know more about your product, whatever business you're in. Could be cars, boats, widgets, or beer. You should know more about your product than your average customer. But yet, when we get into tap rooms and restaurants and breweries, the front of house, it doesn't translate as well as it should. And that's really what I've been trying to tackle, but it's, a long, slow slog. The question I have for you though is, why is this so important? How can this actually help these bars, restaurants, tap rooms do a better job?
Yes. So yeah, we're both passionate about beer education. So yeah, the more people know about something, the more people want to know. So yeah, they will. Yeah, and if people say they don't like a beer, I think a good answer is you just haven't found the one you like yet. Um, yeah, coming from the world of wine, the world of beer is just phenomenal. Every basic taste is covered, every flavor. Brewers have flexibility to experiment with different ingredients. So opening customers' eyes, or potential customers, introducing. I enjoy, if a lot of my friends drink wine. There's some amazing beers that are, like a Flanders Red. It's like a Pinot Noir like wine, and
Hmm.
fresh fruity sours can and get them over the edge. Even my mum has never drunk beer, but since I've been in the industry, she's even found a few things like an oat cream mango IPA that that she likes. So yeah, there's a beer for everybody. You just need to have the confidence or the encouragement to try things. So that's why I like to get involved with organising little events at breweries, helping with beer education. I've written a little beer course, beer basics. It just goes for It's a short course where I introduce different styles, similar to a Cicerone kind of experience. So yeah, the more people know, the more people want to know, the more beer they will buy, the more questions they will ask, and it's good for everybody.
Well, and I buy into that completely. I'm one of the converted, but the question that I hear, and I think it's a valid question, is great. We like to learn, we want to learn, but at some point, someone has to ask the question, well, how does that help us make money? As a server, as a bartender, as a manager, as a restaurant, pub, brewery owner, how do we make more money through better education?
Well, I think it helps. Well, breweries might. There could be improving quality. I think is a big one. The more consumers know about a good beer, a bad beer, a fresh
Hmm.
beer, a good pour, good lacing on a glass. I think it helps. It helps everyone push their boundaries and everyone improves together. That's one aspect, but how does that make more money? That is a tricky question. um,
And
yeah,
and I think it's a fair question because at some
yes,
point, it's like if I own a bar, it's like, yeah, I think that's a great idea, but if I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars, what's the ROI on better education? So I think trying to come up with answers, and I'll prime the pump a little bit too, but I think it's for me, the better my staff knows the beer, the better they can guide their guests
yes,
on an experience, and the more good experiences my guests have, then they're likely to come back next week and bring friends.
yeah.
Uh,
And I
and
think I
and
just thought of another small way. When I kickstarted Flavour Logic to focus on more beer services 2 years ago.
Mhm.
I started doing consumer workshop, boost your beer tasting skills workshop at my local bar, and I was amazed. Most of the people who came along hadn't been to this particular bar, so I was introducing them to a good craft beer bar. They they bought extra drinks before and after the workshop. So then they bought a meal. So in that way, having these little extra events can bring more people in, brings more
Yeah,
exposure to the venues. Um, and yeah, I introduced people in those workshops to beer styles they thought they didn't like, and then they discovered they did like, some sours, or someone who's sensitive to bitterness did like, a session IPA or something like that. So,
yeah.
yeah, in that
I
way, I think you can, if there's more people doing things like this and getting people out, um, since the pandemic, everyone's keen to get out and socialize a lot more. So I think we should take advantage of that.
Yeah. And again, post pandemic, I don't want to go out all the time because, well, in this current state, we're dealing with a kind of a global inflation still.
Mm,
So to go out and eat, it's going to cost a lot of money. So, if or a lot more than it used to. So if we're going to go out, then it better be good, better be worth it.
that's right.
And I've
That's right.
and,
So
and
yeah,
we've
that's
gone
where
out to places
yeah,
where
we all improve
well,
quality together. Yeah.
Well, improve the quality, and if I go to a restaurant and I think I could have cooked better food at home, I get annoyed. But when
Yes,
I go to a place that just rocks my world in every way, I do not remember how much I paid for that meal.
that's
And
right.
it was expensive, but I have no clue. I'm just mesmerized by the experience, and
Yes,
I
and
think
you'll tell your friends or share it on socials. Yeah, yeah,
absolutely,
and then
absolutely,
word spreads. Yep.
absolutely. Um, uh, so so creating this, giving this sensory education to staff, do you think that translates over to guests and customers? Do you think
Yeah,
people
yeah,
care? I
yeah.
mean,
I think so. And then, yeah, I just think giving people an opportunity to, yeah, I like doing blind tastings, so
yeah.
people get to, you get a little boost of confidence when you can pick differences between something based on taste, or you can um, have information to tell customers, how, it's like, oh yeah, it is difficult to decide on a style. Maybe they'll have better vocabulary to help guide a customer into a style they like, or just explain the selection of taps that is on offer. Yeah, having the words to describe things and the confidence is all part of it.
Um, and so I'm so glad. I mean, here you and I are both beer educators. We're talking about why people need to hire us. So, if you're listening, hire us in
Yes,
different parts of the world because like we talked about before, I may not have the data that will prove that you will make more money with this education, but we have the anecdotal evidence that you can make more money. And my thing is, if I can teach just one server per day to have more knowledge and guide their guests to a better experience, and upsell that instead of just how about another beer? How about a creme brulee with this beer? They're amazing, and you can make an extra $50 to $100 per day just for that one server. And if you expand that down an entire year, that's $15,000 to $30,000 more in revenue. And so just
Yeah.
having that education can lead to that. And that's really what I want to get to with this. But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um,
I think you've got
but
your data there.
yeah, it's the data. It's just,
Yeah.
well, it's data in dollars. So now everyone's paying attention, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
um, so let's talk more about Australia. In a previous guest, nowhere near Australia, actually, in the Southeast Asia, was just talking. He's a world traveler, and he was talking about how that. And I forget his quote, but he said something to the effect of that beer drinkers in Australia have way more fun. And he just said that they're boisterous and not that they're whooping and hollering, like a bunch of
Mm.
American cowboys, but what is the Australian beer culture like?
um, I was thinking of fun in terms of, a lot of our brewers like to experiment. We've got, to kind of break the rules. Lots of fun flavors going on. Uh, yes, yes, certainly. Beer, when I describe my job to people, people just say, "Oh, you've got a fun job." So yeah, certainly a strong culture. And I think in the last 5 to 7 years, we've got a bigger boom in the small to medium sized breweries. There's a craft brewery trail, multiple craft brewery trails around every capital city. And then a brewery tour kind of service is more and more common. But yeah, we don't have the huge population. So yeah, a lot of the scene is scaled back. I have noticed just in recent years, craft breweries, people into craft beer don't go to pubs as much. They'll go to their local tap room, which is great. And so local tap rooms are a bit more like, you know, they have a little bit more of a pub type atmosphere. There's always trivia nights. Every night of the week they try to have something different. But you might be able to see the local footy game, or people get encouraged to go out a few drinks before a game. Beer is still stereotypically associated with a bit of blokey, sporty culture, I have to admit,
Yeah.
but that might be the world over.
And frankly,
But yeah,
I don't,
there's
I'm not certain that's a bad thing.
okay. Um, so yeah, and in terms of traditional pub and beer, if we're separating kind of craft beer is especially I think it's very welcoming. What I love about breweries is they're family friendly, so you can see a lot of people going out for family meals. You don't see that so much in the wine industry, or pubs so much. Pubs have got most of Australian cities, pubs have got pokey gambling rooms. So yeah, going to an independent small brewery is where heaps of people hang out. Yeah, you go on a weekend and you'll see people having birthday parties and gatherings, and yeah, there's industry
Well,
networking nights happening at breweries. It's all good.
Well, and I think when we were messaging back and forth, you talked about
Mm.
when you left Nashville, you traveled to a few other places before
Yes.
heading back home to Australia, and I forget your comment, but you alluded to discovering all the differences about these places, the beers and the culture there, and how it's so different from back home. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. No, I had really, yeah, all the breweries I visited, a few in Nashville, a few in Asheville, and also Columbia, South Carolina. Um, I was impressed, actually, a really well educated staff. I had good customer experiences. And when I walked into a place I didn't know anything about, I started asking the same question: "What are you known for?" And then that way I helped. It helped me choose. All right, well, they've said IPA. I better get an IPA on my tasting paddle, tasting flight. But yeah, the experience is very good. I think generally breweries are on a bit larger scale in America. They were bigger tap rooms. You've got a lot of
Mm.
most bars have more tap options.
Well, we
So
Americans like bigger, better. Just
bigger,
everything's got to
better.
be huge. It's just got
Yep,
to be huge.
yep, yep. What else was there? The serving sizes were a bit bigger generally too for everything. I learned to ask for a half pour, so I could taste a few more
Yeah.
beers. Um, but yeah, it was the actual design of the rooms was similar. Some were like a warehouse type feel, and so, there's different ways people are designing their tap rooms, but most of them had um, similar types of things to ones in Australia. I think more merchandising is done well in America, and I noticed
Hmm.
that at the Craft Brewers Conference, huge range of merchandise and stickers and all these different little things that Australian breweries don't do as much. Or they sell black t-shirts or yeah, so a
So
lot more colourful variety and bigger everything.
so is that to say that conversely, the Australia is just smaller tap rooms, smaller breweries, and
Yeah.
it's just a shirt that says brewery from Adelaide or something like that. Is
Yeah,
that the
yeah. Well,
gist?
not so many colors to choose from, the t-shirt ranges, or 10 types of caps or yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, and from your experience, I guess I'm not going to ask a data question. I'm going to ask a personal choice question. But is it better to have more T-shirts, more swag with different colors, or is it better just to have a couple different options? What
Well,
serves consumers better?
I it, yeah, in my travels in America, I actually did get a little bit of choice choice overload. I think there's so
Mm,
many flavors, so much of everything. It was a bit overwhelming. I kind of do think a more carefully curated selection will is easier for a customer to choose from. That was just a general statement about things in America. Yeah,
yeah.
lots of flavors of everything. Yeah.
It is that just the idea of if you highlight everything, then you highlight nothing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah. No, I've listened to some interesting podcasts about the psychology of choice. And yeah,
Yeah,
when you are given less options, it's easier psychologically. Yep. Yep. So
yeah.
not sure how to
Well, so that
how to change that, but
that would be an interesting. It's funny. So, and you may not be aware of this, but one of the cultural phenomenons um, from the southwestern part of the U.S., California in particular, is the In-N-Out Burger. We love our burgers. We love our fast food. This is a fast food chain that basically serves. You can have a burger with cheese, or a double burger with cheese, or a burger with no burger with cheese. And you basically have just like one option with a couple of variations, and it's with or without fries. That's your choice.
Mhm.
Uh, and everyone just goes crazy. Or I mean, the lines are all the way around because they make
Mhm.
great fries. Are you aware In and Out the whole thing?
I
Yeah.
I
So
heard of it, and unfortunately, I didn't get to try it. But yes,
well, and
no, I
anyone
think that
if anyone's living
demonstrates,
under
yeah,
Well,
demonstrates
if
what we're
anyone's
talking
living under
about.
a rock, they don't know about In and Out. That's just one of those things where you
Mhm.
you have limited choices, and we love it. That's just kind of going back to your comment about maybe too much choice causes a
Mm.
problem.
Yeah, I just noticed that as a consumer in general. Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
I wanted as a sensory analyst, I wanted to try lots of
Yeah.
things, but yeah, I just didn't want to. I was overwhelmed.
Well, but that's part of the experience. That's part of the data that we need to add to this whole conversation too.
Yes. Yeah.
Is because if you're trying to uh, sense quality in beer, all that is leading toward a good customer experience. So all of this data comes into play, not just
Mhm.
this subset of diacetyl or no diacetyl. It's all the stuff that we need to consider. But
Yeah.
I want to hear more about Australia. If I were to head to Australia in
Mm.
Adelaide and meet you for a beer next week, we sit down, we have our beer. What would you recommend I drink? And if I were to ask you, tell me about Australian culture as you know as it's different from any other culture, but using the beer as the center point of that. What would you tell me?
Sure, sure. Yeah, so Australia has, yeah, probably take you to a great local pub, a pub that hasn't changed since I went to uni. They've always served classic Australian beer, like especially South Australian beer, like Cooper's.
Hmm.
And when I went to a Total Wine in America, Cooper's beer was the only Australian beer I actually saw on the
Yep.
shelf. um, I don't know, a lot of home brewers in America have probably used a Cooper's kit once or twice.
Yeah.
So, yep, definitely have a fresh pint of Cooper's ale at a good pub, and then go to a few craft breweries. They're not so in walking distance, but yeah, quick drive around the suburbs. You'd get 3 or 4 done in a day. The beer styles would be they would always have a American style pale ale, American style IPA. Um, there's a couple breweries doing only doing classic European styles. One brewery's doing classic European styles. It's a bit of a newer niche in the last few years. Uh, Breweries will always have a hazy on tap. Uh, Craft lagers are getting more and more common, and I think that's Australian beer history has got a history of mainstream big lager brands. Brands like 4X, Victoria Bitter, they're available in every pub across the country, and yeah, similar to other countries like
Yeah.
America. Home brewers, craft breweries, they want more flavour in their beers. So yeah, we've got all of that. But yeah, the breweries would be yeah on a weekend. They'd be bustling families. They might have some of them have cornhole, some of them have games, lawn games. Um, a lot of them got pinball machines too. So it's yeah, but instead of a choice of 10 or 12 of something, we'll have 3 or 4 of
well,
something. And the food would be similar: burgers, pizzas, that kind of thing.
well, let me ask you more about Australian beer styles, and of course, I'm familiar with Coopers. I've had their export stout, and and of course, the Australian sparkling ale is one of the beer styles. Well, the only
Yes.
beer style that's really acknowledged as being uniquely Australian. It's light. It's very carbonated and sparkly and yeast driven and full of flavor and refreshing and delicious. Are there other uniquely Australian beer styles or beer variations that are not yet part of the beer styles, but are emerging in beer styles that we need to be aware of?
I think the as in my experience in beer judging, we have Australian lager category that's different to um, German style, Czech style. We have Australian lager, so that covers the Australian beers that get entered in Australian Beer Awards. They are they're very light, crisp, easy to drink. I think a little bit more flavoursome than American light lager. Uh, some of them have got some nice estery notes, maybe a bit like apple. So Australian lager, I think we've got an amazing hop scene, hop growing culture. Australia, New Zealand, a lot of American brewers like to
Hmm.
use those hops, and they kind of have. There's different names for it. I've heard Australasian pale or kind of a New World, New
Yeah,
World style
yeah.
hop. hop-driven pales.
Apparently, all the other names
So,
were taken when they
yeah, I think
decided
they're
to
the main
call
ones. We don't have
those
any
hops New World.
particular. Yeah, the the old beer traditions are mostly from like English and Irish heritage. The
Mm,
first colonists. So yeah, it's
yeah.
English ales have the background of Cooper's ales. We've always had them, and then we've had the mainstream lagers, and yeah, now we have the world of craft flavour. And yeah, New Zealand and Australian hops are really um, yeah, beautiful flavors ranging, stone fruit, tropical, all kinds of citrus. Yeah, lovely beers.
So if you were to predict 10, 15, 20 years from now, uh, what do you expect we'd see coming out of Australia? Obviously, about beer.
Yeah, I think probably, well, we'll see more beer education, more educated
Yeah, we
staff.
will.
I think pubs will be more, we'll hopefully get some more gastro pubs, where food is as much a focus as the drinks. Smaller breweries in more regional areas. I think that will spread. Um, I don't. The cities aren't necessarily saturated. There's room for breweries in different pockets of different suburbs,
But what
but
about beer
I
styles?
think
Do you
that's
predict any beer styles coming out in the next decade or
um,
two?
beer styles. Well, a growing number of beers that keep getting entered in kind of specialty experimental. I'm not sure if there's a particular trend. We do like coffee. Just recently, this winter here, I've noticed a, a burst of coffee flavored stouts or Vienna coffee lagers. So Australians love their coffee. Particular fruits. There might be some native ingredients, but they're not easy to get hold of. It'd be hard to
Mm.
make commercially, but yeah, something like lemon myrtle. Um, you know, people are using like the gin culture here. People using a lot of Australian native ingredients, and people have made lots of beers with them, but I don't think they'll ever hit a large volume. So yeah, I just think more smaller breweries spread out across the country. Um, Good education. The beer styles might turn. We might go back to some of the classics. I've seen it in the last few years.
I hope so.
As
I hope we go
as
back
we
to the classics.
travel the world more and more.
Yeah.
Newer brewers. Um, interestingly, a lot of breweries in Adelaide opened during the pandemic. So yeah, as they start to travel around and bring ideas back from Europe, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Um, if so, I'm going to go back to that scenario. If I were to show up on your door next week and say, "Hey, let's go have a beer," uh, as speaking specifically to Australian culture, what would you suggest I eat with the beer that you'd serve me?
Yeah. So we've got amazing food, uh, particularly Australian food. Well, I'd prefer to have you around for a barbecue. So I could, could cook some food, grab. We have a very multicultural background, so we got amazing Asian food on our doorstep, Middle Eastern. So probably a few kangaroo snags on the barbie, kangaroo sausages. It's very Australian. So yeah, but the kind of barbecue I'm talking about is just frying sausages and chops on a
Gotcha.
grill. It's not
Uh,
it's
sound,
not the American 12-hour
that
slow,
that sounds great, but
not that kind of slow.
well,
I mean, we do have breweries that are doing that, of course. But yeah, the classic Australian barbecue is just fried onions, sausages, bread, something like a coleslaw and a potato salad. That's a summer barbecue. Yeah, I wish it was summer for me.
yeah, yeah, that's true. And I guess, and this is just my naivete. I didn't realize that you guys actually ate kangaroos. I thought that was, too
Yes.
irreverent. I guess if I were to extrapolate, it'd be like,
There
we're
are
eating
there's a
bald
lot
eagle, which we don't
around.
do.
Yeah. 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 A lot of people might not know that, but it's a very lean, healthy meat, not much fat, and there are lots around. They're it's a
Yeah.
sustainable product.
And what do they taste like?
Yep. Some people say is a little gamey flavor, but I think these days it's just like a lean red meat. Good, not much. People serve it quite often on the a little bit on the rare side, and it goes really well with something like a sweeter vegetable like sweet potato, beetroot,
Mm,
that kind of. It's often served with a little bit of a sweet sauce
okay.
or relish. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well,
But
when in Rome does the Romans do, but when in Australia, you know. So
kangaroo burger
kangaroo
or
burger,
steak.
and a Australian IPA. Um, so we've talked about sensory, we've talked about culture, we've talked about the differences and everything like that. But from when you combine all of your experiences through wine, beer, whatever it may be, how do you? What's your definition of a good beer experience, and how would you put that together for a guest if it were up to you?
So I think, yeah, a good beer experience is when um, the consumer is feeling welcome. They're given good attention. They might, if they are having trouble choosing, they'll be they'll be guided into choosing something that will suit their preferences. We know we're all different, and not everyone wants the latest hype beer or what the brewery might be known for, but just something they will be able to drink a whole pint of. So yeah, attention, feeling welcome, and welcome in terms of whatever your background, culture, all that kind of stuff. Whether you've got kids, all those kinds of things. I'd like to see a range of beer styles, of course. They need to be fresh and good quality. So styles from a sour, um, something hoppy, something dark, something fruity, and not just beer, but you need to include other drinks. Someone in a group will drink wine or a cocktail, or won't drink at all.
Yeah,
So um, non-alcoholic beers are popular here too,
good.
and they're available. Seltzers have been a bit slow on the trend from America, but more craft seltzers coming out. So yeah, range of beverages, good food, of course. Um, if if there's a chance to attend a beer and food pairing workshop, something like that is a bonus. But yeah, just feeling welcome, getting good attention, having a range of styles, maybe not too many to choose from, and yeah, beer's a social drink, so it needs to be, yeah, as someone already said, yeah, Aussie beer drinkers like their beer to be fun.
Apparently. Um,
Yes.
uh, so other questions I have, just to kind of like, wind things down, but we're just going to have a little bit of fun now. And you've listened to the podcast, so you probably know what's coming. But tomorrow, Bryony, the world has voted. You get to be the queen of the beer world for an entire day. What is the first thing you'd like to change about beer in the world?
Yes. Good question. Um, well, just a quick one. All beer stays as fresh as possible in however way that can happen. Um, and then also, yeah, in the people who have the chance to make good beer, you know safety is number one, closely followed by quality. So keep quality as a focus. Don't take your eye off the ball. Yeah, just um, make better quality, not necessarily quantity. Is would be a good motto.
I would support that motto. Um, so at the end of your royal day, your service to the world is done, and we're going to fly you anywhere in the world and you can have anything to drink and anything to eat, where would you go and what would you have?
Yeah, there are so many options and things on my bucket list to do in beer. But as I'm sitting here on a cold winter's day, probably just take me to Munich in a beer garden with a big glass of fresh Hefeweizen and freshly baked pretzel. I, yeah, I've got a German surname, German background, so yeah, can't take me. It'd be awesome to go to the real German culture, beer
So you're going
culture
to
in
pass
Germany.
on the oh my gosh, what was the animal we just talked about? It's Friday at happy hour.
Kangaroo.
Yeah, thank you. You're going to pass on the kangaroo sausage and have a bratwurst
Yeah.
instead.
Yep, yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Um,
Sure.
and the other big question, of course, is obviously you're putting your life, your love, your business all into the world of beer. But why does good beer matter so much to you?
Oh, beer is very social friendly. The people you meet in the beer world are the best people. Yeah, love having the chance to taste such a wide range of there's such a wide range of samples and styles. I'll never get to try them all, but yeah, it doesn't hurt to try.
Yeah. Well, for anyone who's curious about the work you're doing and well, they may not be able to take advantage of your services if they live somewhere else, but if they wanted to look you up and find out more, where could they go?
Certainly. So business is Flavour Logic, website flavourlogic.com. That's flavour with a U, the
I was just going to say that.
English Australian spelling. And
Because half the world
yeah, people are
misspells it, but
welcome
I'm not
to.
going to say which half.
Yes, I'm active on Instagram at Flavour Logic. You can send messages there, or my email taste@flavourlogic.com. Happy to talk to anyone in the beer world, or help people anywhere.
And if anyone wants to fly you to, let's say sunny Southern California to do some beer training, that's how they could connect with you as well, right?
Of course,
Of
but
course.
it's probably cheaper to get you.
Well, I don't know. We might need both of us. Um, Last thing, I had a conversation recently about, all these the when we think about the different generations of people who drink, and you have, some of the older generations who, hey, back in my day, we had, a pale ale and we were happy. And then you have these younger generations where, I don't like beer. I want some, what's new? What do you have new today? What do you have new yesterday? What do you have new tomorrow? What advice do you have for people who are entering the world of alcohol that are of age and they're discovering, drink beyond that quick buzz, that quick fix? They're discovering that there might be something more to all this this beer world. What advice do you have for those folks?
Yeah, we see a lot of people go for kind of sweet things at the start of their alcohol drinking experience. I just remind people that your taste can change. You don't have to follow the trends, follow your palate. Know that your sensitivities are different to someone else's, and it might, you might be due to your genetics. So, just follow your palate, don't follow the trends, and know that taste can change over time. And if you try different things, you'll find things that work for you and that you like.
Awesome. And last thing, is there anything you'd like to share? Anything you like to say that we didn't quite cover?
Oh, I think that last one was good. Yeah, just covering taste widely. Yeah, learn what you like and just why you like something. Perhaps think about more about what you're tasting. Use all of your senses in
All of
in
you,
the world of
and take notes and record the
tasting
data.
experience. Yeah,
Well,
only if you want to.
yeah, or don't, or just tell a story and drink.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's been a joy to meet you through this beer world and follow the work that you're doing and the resources you're putting out on your website and on Instagram. And it was an awesome, wonderful surprise to meet you here in the American South at a beer conference and actually get to have a beer with you. That's my goal with everyone I get to talk to, especially on the podcast. Is someday I just want to sit and have a beer, and so
Yeah.
I can cross you off my list. We got that done. Um, but thank you for
Yes.
coming
Thanks very
onto the
much.
podcast and sharing your experience.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a lovely chat. Yep. Hopefully we'll meet again someday.
Absolutely. Over a kangaroo burger for sure.
Sure. Thank you.
Cheers. In his book, Tasting Beer, Randy Mosher tells us, like any aspect of a consciously lived life, enjoying beer to the fullest takes education, experience, and a proper frame of mind. That's why educators like Briony are so important. Without them, a beer is just a beer, which would be a shame because it's so much more. In the next episode, we talk to a professor and author about humanity's relationship with alcohol and why we just love to get drunk. I'm on a virtual tour of the craft and culture of beer around the globe. I put Good Beer Matters on video so I can take you along for the ride. If you know of a person, a place, or a beer story that needs to be told, let me know. Meanwhile, grab a beer, hang out with friends, and let your world open up. Thank you for listening. Cheers.